Hello everyone, it's Coach Dave here, and as you can see, we are finally here. We are finally streaming and reviewing, or rather reporting, on a real driving simulator. The ones that come from PCs, the ones that have the best physics in the world, crash damage, clean racing, and everything in between. iRacing. Apparently this is where all the cool kids hang out, and apparently I've been missing out. However, the truth is, I have actually been playing iRacing for a very long time. I just haven't had it at my house, so I haven't been able to make videos of it. However, because of my incredible Patreon members, over a period of time I've been able to save up enough cash to buy a gaming PC that is worthy of such a good simulator. And it arrived last week, and of course one of the first games I installed was iRacing. The other one is Assetto Corsa Competizione, but I am doing some special things there, so I haven't yet created a video for that particular game. However, iRacing is plenty fun as it is. So immediately I jumped into the Ferrari Fixed Championship, and it was at one of my weakest tracks in Gran Turismo, but it turns out that I'm actually not so bad around here in iRacing. And that I've always found that kind of strange, is that between two games my skill levels or ability to extract a lap time do vary depending on the game. So in Gran Turismo I'm really no good around here, whereas in iRacing it seems that all is okay. Now, the first time I started to play iRacing was in 2016. I used to stream it or run it through my Mac, but at the time, and I think it's still the case today, the Mac cannot run your steering wheel's force feedback, so I would play this game without any force feedback, and frankly I struggled back then. And I didn't really enjoy a lot of the quirks in the game. There are still quirks in this game which I really don't enjoy. I really hate the menu UI, and I think the new beta menu UI is a small improvement, but they still have some way to go. And there's also certain things in the game which I don't find particularly realistic, specifically with the Ferrari. There's this weird sort of snap oversteer. Oh, here we go. Let's just cut quickly to some phenomenal crash physics going on there. Now, I do know that iRacing is going to soon be releasing a new crash physics engine, which will be cool. And to be fair to them, their crash physics at the moment are actually pretty good. When you hit a wall in this game, it really does feel like you've hit an actual wall. But yeah, going back to certain things I don't like. When you in the 488 and you are braking and turning into a corner, there's this weird sort of snap oversteer, which often leads into a big spin if you don't have experience with the game. The truth is, in real life that doesn't really happen, because you have a bit more feeling and stuff, but I think the snap oversteer is quite exaggerated in the GT3 cars and GTE cars in this game, which I've always found quite strange. However, the things that they do well is the sort of aggressiveness of curbs and the impact that they have on cars. I find that to be quite realistic and really satisfying when you hit them. However, another thing I don't like is the force feedback in the game. To me, and this is, I know all these opinions, by the way, are subjective. They're subjective to me. I'm not telling you that you have to feel this way, by the way. So disclaimer over. But I feel like the force feedback in iRacing is some of the worst force feedback in all simulators. And I've played this with the direct drive. I've played this with my belt-driven wheel as well. And on the heavy curbs you do feel something, but on the light curbs you feel almost nothing. You also don't really feel through the force feedback any understeer, and I frankly think that Gran Turismo, of all the games, gets the feeling of understeer the best through the force feedback than any other game. So I do hope that iRacing go on to improve that, but you know, my opinion in this really doesn't matter, guys. A lot of you have mentioned that you can't wait to hear my opinion on iRacing so that you can maybe consider buying it, but at the end of the day, let's be honest, the best drivers in the world, such as Max Verstappen, Lando Norris, in the GT world you got Calvin van der Linde, even now recently Dries van Toor. These guys play these games on the regular and they find it useful for their real life racing. So I don't think you need a bigger endorsement than a Formula 1 driver using this as their simulator game. The only reason I have always stuck to Gran Turismo, or one of the major reasons, is that I really like that it's on a PlayStation, it's plug and play, it's really easy to get into, and the underlying physics are actually there. For example, when you're braking and turning, or when you're getting on the power in Gran Turismo, and the diff starts to engage, you get understeer like you would in real life, or oversteer if it's engaged too soon. So those things to me are things that I look for. However, in iRacing, it is much more accurate, it's much more nuanced, it has a lot more detail. And to be honest, as I was playing this more and more on the weekend, I was getting much more addicted. The only thing I wish is that there was more daily races around regular racetracks like this one in specific car classes. So, it's just a selfish thing, but it would be really cool if the Ferrari Fixed Championship had more than one track for the week, because eventually I did get a little bit bored with the game, but that wasn't necessarily because of the physics or anything like that. It was just I did this race to death, and I did the Mazda race once or twice, but the interface really was messing me around a little bit. I also had quite a few instances where the servers were going down, and I was getting it's really strange, like random track limit penalties out of nowhere, and I think that was to do with lag. I just a total guess, but I was getting track limit penalties for no particular reason, but I knew that there was a lot of lag going on, and then I had some steering calibration issues, so that was a bit strange. And coming from a world where everything is plug and play, that was also a little bit frustrating. Nevertheless, the racing in here is really fun, and in this particular race I did a decent qualifying. I should have qualified third, but landed up I think 6th or 7th. As you could see at the start, there was a bit of I managed to go down the inside of the blue Ferrari, and then 2 laps later the guys who I was chasing down in front of me had their issues at the end of the very long back straight, Conrad straight. So I was fortunate in that instance. I haven't yet won a race in the Ferrari Fixed. I have won some races before in the Mazda MX-5 Cup, but that was back in the day, and I'm pretty sure that was on a very low driver ranking level. So still, my driver ranking level is quite low. I'm just below 2,000, and that's mostly from the 2016 era of David Perel racing. So I'm pretty much looking forward to working on that and improving that. I do still have a tendency to make the odd mistake and bottle it and land up on my roof. That has happened once or twice in qualifying, but overall the experience has been super fun. I haven't really touched the settings in the game. The setups in particular. I never really have done that kind of stuff anyway. And one of the reasons I choose these fixed championships is that you don't have to mess with the setup. It's all down to driving, and that's something that I really like. As you can see, if you watch the onboard, in general these setups are quite neutral, and there's a bit of understeer, so it makes it easy to pick up and get going. I don't yet have a load cell brake pedal, so I'm using something a bit more digital, but who knows. I'm hoping and praying that Thrustmaster bring new pedal sets at some point in the future, so I need to get on their case about that, because it would be really cool and add to the experience that I'm currently having in this game. Anyway, without the load cell pedal, when you jump on the brakes, you can get to 100% brake pressure pretty easily, and you get a pretty good and realistic feeling of the ABS going into a corner. I don't necessarily mean through the force feedback or through the sound, it's just in terms of the handling. With the non-ABS cars, I tend to lock up a little bit too easily, so I'm barely touching the brake pedal with the non-ABS cars, and still getting pretty severe lockups. But that's not the game's fault. That's because I need to think about using a load cell brake pedal. Nonetheless, as I've mentioned before, if you saw in my rig tour, I'm actually really happy with what I've got going here, and I don't see myself changing anything anytime soon. Going back to the race itself, I don't think it's fair yet that I give any sort of coaching advice here. I just using my general sim racing experience to keep the guy behind me. For those of you who have noticed, yes, the screen is cropped, and that's because I had this weird issue, which you can see here, where my taskbar would not disappear. Anyway, defending up the hill to the inside, and now when you're at Bathurst, to overtake is really difficult, so my advice is to run your lines as much as you can, to try and actually pull away, and if you run an overly defensive line through the top of the hill in Bathurst, they will probably find a way past you from behind. So rather focus on your apexes, look ahead, and then only when you're getting towards Conrad Straight should you be looking in your rearview mirrors to think about where you should defend. Up until that point, maximize and finding your apexes, which I actually did not do there. Going down here, I've always had problems breaking into this section and losing the rear. However, this section here seemed to be pretty decent. I did not have the pace to catch the two guys up front. My race pace was mid 204s, and the guys in the front were doing mid 203, so about a second a lap that I'm missing. Anyway, heading down here, Conrad Straight, I managed to pull a small gap in the hill section, and I'll just focus on seeing how close he gets in the slipstream so that I can defend into the next left-hander where you brake heavily for. So he does actually get a monster slipstream. I brake in the middle of the track, make sure I still have some space to find a good apex. I open the door slightly there. He gives me a small nudge, all fair in love and war, and I live to fight another lap. At the moment we're fighting for P3, and of course I want to get a podium for the first time in these kind of races. So I'm pretty focused on defending for my life. Starting a new lap now. I always tended to misjudge the turning point for this corner, and it was also related to the realism of the curving. To be honest with you, I really like that. I think that a lot of other games could work on that, and it definitely is something that's missing in Gran Turismo Sport, is they intentionally dumb down the curbs to make it easier for the sort of, the novice drivers who have just picked up the game. Whereas obviously with iRacing they focus more on professionals and realism, and you definitely see that with the curb mapping in the design of the racetrack. So I really appreciate that. I've also played this game a lot with VR, and when you play around Bathurst, it really feels like the walls are closing in on you. So that's pretty cool that they've done a good job of rendering some of these tracks. I have criticized their track rendering before, and I still will. Certain tracks are really old in terms of their accuracy and rendering. Spa is one of them with the wrong curbing or old curbing. I believe Silverstone layout is still quite old, and that to me is mega frustrating. Especially, this game is not cheap. Out the door, I probably spent close to $80 or $90 buying cars and racetracks that I wanted to go around, and to me, I understand where that money's going. It's going into the investment of this game, but I feel like they could do a better job of keeping the tracks up to date. And I know that there's going to be a lot of people who defend the fact that they aren't up to date, but to me, you're spending this much money, and other games which only charge a once-off fee manage to get it right. I know, for example, Assetto Corsa Competizione, which they're releasing an update, I'm not sure when, relatively soon, and as you can see in their teaser photos, they've got new tracks coming, and they update existing tracks as well. So if it's good for them, I'm not sure why iRacing wouldn't do the same thing. Nevertheless, this track is pretty accurate, and the new Barcelona track which they released recently is also really, really good. I had a really fun front-wheel drive race around there the other day. I managed to upset the guy in P2, but that's normal. Even if I drive on regular roads, I managed to upset someone. Okay, so the guy is right in my slipstream. I'm now running in the middle of the track. You need to create a little bit of doubt, or as I say, run the long lines. So you creep over from where you exit a corner over to the ideal line that you're on, and that creates a little bit of you don't know where the guy's going to go. In the end, he didn't give himself enough space to get an undercut going up the hill, so he had to overbrake. And now I think this is the last lap. I'm really struggling on the tyre. I think it was the tyre. I lost a lot of pace. Again, still learning the game at home, because when I used to play it somewhere else, I didn't have that much time to look at it in intricate detail, and I thought that he was going to get me on Conrad Straight, so I'm focused, super focused here. And then when I start to go down the downhill section, I will one day learn the names of the corners of this track. I look in my rearview mirror and realize he just suddenly disappeared. So later on I found out that he actually hit a wall going through one of the usually flat out corners, but I think that in the slipstream he got a fraction bit of understeer. Luckily in this game the the slipstream effect does not affect handling that much, and to me that's a bit more realistic than Gran Turismo, which gives you quite a bit of understeer. Anyway, so we managed to secure third position here, and heading now down the last bit of track, and pretty stoked with this result. I think this was one of the first races I did since turning on iRacing in my household, but I just want to dedicate the last few seconds to thanking my Patreon members again. for enabling me to get this PC and yeah, crack open games like this. And I'm really looking forward to bringing you more videos from both iRacing and ACC in the future. Gran Turismo is not going away. It's part of my bloodline and my history, so I'll still keep playing that game, and there will be some videos coming soon. But it's really nice to have a bit of variety, and I really hope that you guys find some value in the videos that I make. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it useful, and I will catch you around the next lap. Cheers.